Thank you. I am Judge Stephanie Morrell. I am currently the Associate Circuit Judge, Division 11 here in Boone County, and I am a candidate for the Division 3 Circuit Judge position that covers both Boone and Callaway counties. Our circuit does cover all of Boone and Callaway counties. First of all, just thank you all for coming, for inviting me. Almost 7 years ago, I stood in front of all of you and told you I was the right person to be your next associate circuit judge. You put your faith and trust in me in 2018, again in 2022. And now I'm asking for your support in electing me as the next Division 3 circuit judge for Boone and Callaway counties. It matters who our judges are. For those of you who do not know me, I grew up in a small rural Kansas town with a very large family. When I was a kid, I fell in love with the law. I can't tell you why exactly. There were no lawyers in my family, but I just had a passion for the law. That passion continued to grow through high school, college, law school. I also had a passion for community service instilled in me by my parents. They were always volunteering for scouting events, school events, coaching my siblings and my sports teams. After I graduated from law school in 2000, I moved to Columbia for a job with the Missouri Attorney General's office. I moved to Columbia for a job, but what I found here was a community. This is where I raised my boys, where I've worked, where I've taught at the colleges. I've volunteered at scouting events, sporting events. I've judged countless high school debate tournaments, presented civic education classes to our elementary, middle, and high schools. I volunteered at the law school, encouraging and advising our next generation. My boys and I love our community, and I'm proud of my work, my dedication to the communities in mid-Missouri. It matters who our judges are. I've spent over 20 years in the trenches, appearing almost every day in a courtroom. I worked for over 12 years with the Boone County Prosecutor's Office, prosecuting some of the most complex cases, including 20 homicide trials, successfully serving our community and the victims of crime. As a prosecutor, I knew that for every case I touched, someone's freedom was at stake, and that my decisions would have life and death consequences. I saw firsthand how important it is for our justice system to be staffed by serious, competent, compassionate people working together within the system and within the rules to achieve justice. In 2015, I was in charge of prosecuting a murder for hire scheme in Columbia. The victim was a 46-year-old Brian Daniels who had been seriously injured in a fire. He also suffered from schizophrenia. The defendant in that case had scammed his way into a relationship with Daniels, who had been left vulnerable, disabled, but also very wealthy, following the fire and a subsequent settlement. The defendant was intent on taking advantage of Brian Daniels, and he actually commissioned a hitman to murder him in cold blood. After a year of working on that case, when the jury found the defendant and the hitman guilty of first-degree murder after 2 week-long jury trials, I felt relieved, but I also felt the weight of this work. A man who thought the rules did not apply, who thought he could arrange the taking of a life for the sum of $10,000, was now locked away behind bars. But people in our community were safer as a result. This is just one example of the over 20 homicide cases I handled as a prosecutor. At the same time as I was handling these murder cases, I also was an active member of our treatment courts, working with other community members to provide treatment, counseling, job opportunities to those charged with crimes suffering from addiction or mental health issues, to get them out of our criminal justice system, to get them to be successful members of our community. Again, keeping our community safer and better. It was spending nearly every day in a courtroom. I was honored and humbled to receive the Missouri Prosecutor's President's Award for my work on the Brian Daniels murder case, as well as other cases during my time as a prosecutor. And in 2019, I received the Woman of the Year Award for public service for my work in our community. Since becoming associate judge in 2019, my dedication and passion for our community and the law has only grown. Again, it matters who our judges are. As a judge, I know that every case that I touch affects someone's livelihood, someone's life, or someone's freedom. In the 5 years that I've been on the bench, we have faced numerous changes in the law, from changes in the probate code to rules regarding criminal procedure. I have dedicated myself to implementing those changes to continue to provide justice to our entire community. We've seen numerous changes in the way we look at bond for criminal defendants, seeing more individuals released without cash bond, new rules to ensure that criminal cases do not languish in the court system, to protect the rights of victims and criminal defendants, and quite frankly, a pandemic that changed almost everything we do. Although there's certainly not much good we can say about COVID, I can say that it made the court system look at how we approach and now have improved litigant and public access to our court system. Here in the 13th Circuit, we never shut down. Although my spare bedroom became my courtroom for a while and a card table became my bench as I conducted court over remote video, we never completely shut down. We were still protecting and serving our community. Within a very short time after the initial closures, I contacted the prosecutor's office and a couple of local defense attorneys and asked if they would help me to do a test run of video court, see if we could get that set up. I wanted to keep the judicial process going expeditiously. I could just not wait for others to do something. It was important for victims of crime, for criminal defendants, as well as other litigants. They said yes. After a fairly successful test run or two, we were up and running. Then I, along with a couple of the other judges, pioneered and developed a video court system for the 13th Circuit. Although the pandemic is over, video court is not. I'm happy to say that this system of both in-person and video has allowed attorneys to appear, have their cases heard when they may also have to be in another county, have allowed criminal defendants who do not have transportation to appear, thus avoiding a warrant. And I can say that in my division alone, the number of warrants for failing to appear have decreased by approximately 50%. It's allowed vulnerable individuals, victims of crime, and the public to appear when they may not have otherwise been able to do so. Speaking of access to courts, the Missouri Supreme Court recently passed rules to increase the access to public documents, allowing access not just from the courthouse, but online. Many of these documents contain confidential information that should not be disclosed to others. Again, I couldn't wait for someone else to do something. In order to balance the rights of the public to open records and the rights of litigants, minor children, incapacitated individuals, and even non-parties to the confidentiality of their information, I proposed, and we have since passed here in the 13th, local rules to protect that confidential information. We continue to monitor and work on developing additional rules to ensure that the right to access to courts, public documents, and the right to confidentiality is both balanced and protected. Prior to taking the bench in 2019, except for some intern work when I was at the law school, I had little to no experience in probate. Probate, what happens to our property when we pass, or what happens to us if we can no longer take care of ourselves. An attorney friend of mine told me, if you get the chance to take over probate, do it. And I honestly don't know why he was that insistent, but I was given that opportunity, and I'm very glad I did. I'm very proud of the work that has been done since taking over the probate docket. And upon becoming circuit judge, I plan to keep that docket. I take it very seriously, the responsibility of protecting our most vulnerable individuals, those who cannot take care of themselves, whether it's a minor child, whether it's a disabled or incapacitated individual. I have to ensure that those appointed by this court as their guardian, as their conservator, act in their best interests, while also ensuring that these individuals maintain as much independence as they can, and that they have appropriate housing, medical care, access to mental health resources. Being a judge is not just about knowing the law. It is not just about having experience as a lawyer, and it is certainly not about politics. It is about doing what is right for each person in each case that comes before me. Recently, I had a case come before me in probate court. I had an adult son who was seeking to get guardianship and conservatorship over his elderly father. His father had recently developed a delusional disorder and most likely dementia. Over the last several months, this father had been the victim of catfishing. numerous thousands of text messages of scammers taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from this gentleman. This gentleman had been military for much of his life, retired. He also had a very successful career here in our community. And he was extremely frustrated. He was frustrated not just with the fact that he had been catfished, but at the same time, he was frustrated that his son was trying to take over. He was very frustrated that his son did not understand that this woman that was contacting him was actually in love with him, and if he just sent her a little bit more money, they could live happily ever after. We were just set for a status hearing that day. It should have been 10 minutes, deciding where we were going to go with the case, when we were going to set it for hearing, what was the status with the bank accounts. But what that father needed and what that family needed was a judge who would listen. The father, angry, frustrated over the new diagnosis. The son, frustrated that he could not, despite all his efforts, could not protect all of his father's assets or stop this disease from taking his father's memories. They needed me to listen. So what should have been 10 minutes was 40 minutes. I listened, I counseled, came up with a plan to make sure that the father was protected while at the same time protecting his assets and his dignity. As we all know, our country, including here in the 13th Circuit, is suffering through a mental health crisis. I see it every day in our court system. Individuals in the criminal justice system who would not otherwise be there but for their mental illness, individuals who can no longer take care of themselves, requiring a guardian to assist them with their medical care, their day-to-day living, getting access to mental health resources, assistance with their finances, individuals being taken advantage of, having their benefits stolen because they do not understand the ill intention of others. Again, I could not just sit there waiting for someone else to do something. I currently serve on 2 different committees focused on criminal defendants who suffer from mental illness, focusing on alternatives to incarceration, available resources, prevention, focusing on those already incarcerated who are suffering from severe mental illness. When Judge Leslie Schneider told us that she did not intend to run again and that she intended to retire, I told her I would be happy to take over for her as the facilitator for our mental health jail staffing. It's a group, myself as facilitator, a group of prosecutors, defense attorneys, mental health professionals, members of our treatment court, the sheriff's department. We all meet bi-weekly to discuss those individuals in jail suffering from mental health issues. Whether it's a discussion of potential dispositions to get them out of the jail, whether it's talking about Department of Mental Health, making sure they know that this defendant needs a mental health evaluation, making sure that these individuals do not get lost in our system. As a result of this group's work over the last several years, it was an honor to receive the 2023 Achievement Award from the Missouri Association of Counties. It's also been my pleasure to serve on a committee with ParentLink of Missouri, along with providers and attorneys throughout the state to provide access to resources, access to the court system, legal assistance and guidance for kinship caregivers, grandparents raising their grandchildren, as well as adult children or family members caring for their elderly parents. Our communities need good judges who are committed, dedicated, passionate to what is fair, what is right, and what is equitable. As members of our community, you never know when some unexpected event may force you into the courthouse. It could be a custody issue, a property dispute, or God forbid, a crime. You want to know that the judge listening to your case has legal and life experience to know what impact their decision has on people's lives. Because of that, can fairly judge a case and reach the right outcome. I am the person that our community trusts and supports. I've been endorsed by both Boone and Callaway County retired judges. I've been endorsed and supported by the very attorneys who appear in front of me, both prosecutors and defense attorneys, civil, family, probate attorneys that regularly appear on opposite sides of a case. I've been endorsed by the Columbia Police Officers Association, the Columbia Firefighters Association, and our local elected officials. I am the person that has been in the trenches for over 20 years, the person who has been a public servant my entire career, in the courtroom nearly every day. I am passionate about the work I have done, passionate about the work I will continue to do to serve the communities of Boone, Missouri. It matters who our judges are. That is why I'm asking for you to vote me for Division 3 Circuit Judge to expand my responsibilities, not just to Boone County citizens, but Callaway County citizens as well. I want to thank you all for inviting me again. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Yeah, question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondering how you feel like your campaign is going at this point.
I'm really tired, Mary Jo, but it's going very well. I've had 3 different events this week. We've knocked on thousands of doors, probably thousands more. We're going to head over to Callaway County this weekend as well to meet people. I feel like I've garnered a lot of support through the last several months.
David?
Yes, I'm just curious about the inner workings of the hierarchy. When you win this, hopefully you will, what happens to your current position? Is that an appointed position then, or will there be a special election to fill it?
Kind of both. So I'm technically in the middle of my term for associate circuit judge. So it will be an appointment who will of someone to cover part of that term, and then there'll be an election after that.
How does your current position differ from the position that you were running for? What's it?
Sure. So associate circuit judges generally only handle cases in the county in which they are elected. So generally, I only handle Boone County cases. That being said, the presiding judge can assign me cases in Callaway because it is within our circuit. So I do take different cases from Callaway if the judges over there have a conflict. The other difference is, and so as a circuit judge, I would handle both cases in Callaway County and Boone County. The other difference is circuit judges generally handle the trials of felonies, so higher level criminal cases, although all criminal cases start in associate court. And then the other is that higher level civil cases. And when I say higher level, it's a monetary amount. So generally anything in dispute over $25,000. Probate is actually by statute a circuit position, but in our circuit, it has been assigned to me as an associate circuit judge. So I already handle circuit level cases.
Herb?
Thank you for running for this position.
Thank you.
We believe you are especially well prepared for it. And for multiple reasons, your sign is in front of our house, and there will be very few others there this evening. That said, there is additional special concern in this race involving your opponent. I don't know whether you are willing to make any allusion to
No,
the
she
question
can't. She can't.
on this matter, but let me say there were questions relating to his finances and his possible reasons for running, and I will share those with the group on another occasion. You may or may not feel that you can make any comment on that.
She can't.
Yeah. So under our ethical obligations as candidates for judge and also as judge, we cannot make those type of comments. But I can speak for myself. And if you look at my finances and who has contributed and supported me, it is our local citizens. It is people in Boone and Callaway County. Our community is who is supporting me in this election.
And I will second that. We were at the fundraiser on Thursday, and as far as being members of the general public, we were in small number compared to the elected and judges and I'm sorry, and lawyers in the current town or political operatives. And it was very interesting to hear how many people were saying how good a judge she had been and how the other person has not worked locally. And just the amount of across the board kind of support that she has locally is amazing. But Herb and I had not quite realized all the things that were going on in the campaign, and we need to get the word out.
Thank you, Sue. I appreciate it.
And I heard a lot about people saying that judges that came before, lawyers that came before you on each side of the case were often supporting you now, even though they were opposed to each other in the courtroom. That says a lot if you can please both sides.
Yeah. Pleased may not be the exact word, but yes, they know I'm going to listen. And I'm
They
going
they admired how you
Just
handled the
wondering
case.
admiration.
I guess fairness is the issue.
Yes,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that she listens and that she goes the extra mile if she feels that there's something in the case that needs extra personal attention. That is not always something that people are either good at or pay attention to. And thank you.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Who is the presiding judge right now?
Brooke Jacobs is the presiding judge currently. His term ends at the end of the year, beginning of the year. And so there will be a different presiding judge starting in 2025.
Does that mean he runs for office again? Doesn't, no.
No, it's
Oh, you're
selected
right.
by the judges.
Okay.
So, yes.
Are there changes that you would like to see in court procedures, or are things running well, or what? I mean, you'll have more better position to advocate and affect changes in the system when you're elected.
Yes. Some of the changes are some of the things that I had already talked about, where we are expanding video court. Obviously we don't do everything via video. There is something to be said about people being in person for certain types of proceedings, but being able to do that. I have been working on, as I discussed, mental health issues, both in regards to criminal cases as well as in the probate. One of the things that, if you followed the news, there have been discussions about Department of Mental Health and things that they have and have not been able to do over the last couple of years. I would like to facilitate more work and see those cases running more expeditiously to make sure that our community that needs that help has that help, and we're not being more proactive rather than reactive. And then there are things that we can do in the judicial system to do that.
Are there any more questions or comments?
This is pretty quick.
It was.
Let me ask about the question of mental health.
Yeah.
What is it that you have been able to do? One of the concerns is the number of people who have mental health problems who are in the jails. And have you been able to work on that issue? And is
Yes.
that something you want to continue to work on?
Yes, absolutely. So our group that is comprised of members of the sheriff's department, prosecutors, defense attorneys, mental health professionals in the community, we meet approximately every 2 weeks. And we have a list of individuals that are currently in the jail. We discuss whether there are resources outside, so they don't need to be held in the jail. Make sure that if the more serious, the more severe their mental health issues may be, we make sure to keep in contact with the Department of Mental Health. I have the ability to tell our other judges that may have those cases, there's issues at the jail. You may want to set this case sooner rather than later. Look at those evaluations. So it's a tiny piece, but by having that conversation, especially with the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, mental health professionals, we can move these cases faster so they're not sitting in jail waiting on those evaluations, which unfortunately can take a long time.
I have a comment if somebody will let me.
You're unmuted.
Okay, good. I just want to let you guys know that I threw in the comments just kind of an expansion. Somebody asked basically what's the difference between associate versus circuit judges. And you know, Judge Morrell is incredibly qualified, but I don't know if she did enough service explaining the seriousness of that circuit judge role and why she's so qualified for it. She is the person for this job because it's a very important position. I gave just a brief summary of what circuit judges could have to handle in this county. And for those folks who followed, this is Jose Caldera, private citizen speaking here. But for those folks who followed the Amendment 3 last minute fights that were happening in court, it all started with a decision by a circuit judge down in Jeff City. All right. So had that circuit judge, Judge Limbaugh, ruled differently, then we would not have had that very stressful 24-hour period. So just to let you guys know, the circuit judge position is incredibly important to these counties. And Judge Morrell is probably the most qualified, most regarded judge that I know around here. And I personally appeared in front of her, and I'm not currying favor, Judge. I've appeared in front of her, and she is a rock star that much deserves this position, and we need in this position.
Thank you.
Anything else? Then I guess we're ready for some closing remarks.
Sue and Herb have their hand up. Is that,
Oh, yes, they do.
I just,
Sue and Herb,
Oh,
Unmute.
unmute yourself.
We have a wonderful opportunity for a bit of public education. I think that many people here may not be aware of the volume of work that goes across the desk of the circuit court. How many cases, quote unquote, a year do you process, and how many in general for the court?
well, I don't know that I could tell you exactly a year. I can tell you on Tuesday, I handled over 100 criminal cases in one day. And I do criminal dockets 2 to 3 days a week, depending on my schedule. And then my probate dockets, I handle 3 days a week, and I have anywhere from 10 to 20 per docket. And that's just because they take longer in those dockets, longer hearings. I also handle mental health dockets. Essentially, should somebody be held in the hospital for an extended period of time because of a mental health issue. And I do those, I start those at 8:30 in the morning, and I do those 2 to 3 times a week. Each of our associate judges handle about that many, and each of our circuit judges handle about that many a day. And so our volume, I think right now in this year alone, we have had over 3,000 criminal cases filed, probate filed. I think we're in the 300s at this point, which doesn't sound like a lot, but probate cases stay open for years. You deal with them for years. And so that's a lot. And then our civil cases, whether it's an election dispute, as Jose pointed out, a personal injury case, those can go on for years as well. And we're around 3,000 right now, I think, at the last number I saw. So it is a very large volume. You want to make sure that the people who are in front of you know that you have the time to listen to their case. I want them to have the opportunity to tell me what they need to tell me, to have the hearing that they need to have, but also respect everybody else's time and move expeditiously, but make sure that everybody has their opportunity to be heard.
Has our judicial workforce kept pace with our population growth?
Well, if you would have asked me about 2 months ago, I would have said no. But the legislature approved a new circuit judge position for our circuit a couple months ago, and the governor signed off on it, approved the funding for it. So in fact, yesterday, our newest circuit judge, Ben Miller, who is out of Callaway County, was sworn in as our Division 13. Prior to that, here in Boone and Callaway, we call it the weighted workload. Our weighted workload showed that we were well above what we should be expected to do, and as compared to other circuits. So we desperately needed, because they base it on population as well as case filings, we needed another circuit judge position. So yes, 2 months ago or 3 months ago, I would have said, oh no, we really desperately need one. But our legislature and our governor came through. And so, yes, we now have another circuit judge, which is fantastic.
So how many circuit, can you, how many circuit judges do we have and how many associate?
So we now have 5 circuit judges.
Okay.
We have 2 commissioners, which handle family law and our treatment courts. And then, let's see, 5, 2, 7. So we are at, and then 6 associate judges between Boone and Callaway County. Sorry, I had to do quick math. Yes. There are 2 associate circuit judges in Callaway generally, and then the rest of us are over here in Boone.
And as I understood from, which I hadn't quite realized, the population difference between Callaway and Boone is drastic.
It is drastic.
Also gotten good support from politicians in Callaway. Is that correct?
Yes, both associate circuit judges, Judge Sterner and Judge Carol England, who are retired, have endorsed me. I've received the support of law enforcement over in Callaway County, including the sheriff, the chief of police, and then the mayor of Fulton are supporting.
What's the population difference?
Well, I haven't looked at the exact population, but I think Callaway County is anywhere between 10 and 15. We may have a couple of Callaway County people here today when I was looking at the list. And I think we are over 100,000 in our county. So
120.
I know what you can say in a campaign is limited, but do you have a way to get that information of endorsements out to the public?
Yes. So if you go to my website, which is judgemorrell.com, all of our endorsements and supporters are on there now. As we get them, we are putting them on. You can also go to my Facebook page, Judge Morrell for Circuit Judge on Facebook and Instagram. And the endorsements, we're releasing them every day and the statements that they made. But the easiest way is probably judgemorrell.com.
Right.
And Dave just put it in the chat. So.
Any final comments? Then. Herb's back.
Herb's always back. In addition, I'd like you to comment on.
Okay.
It's clear to me that this particular circuit in recent decades has maintained a quite high reputation beyond its boundaries, as indicated to me by the apparent rejection rate. Would you be willing to comment upon the reputation and sustainedness of decisions made in this circuit?
Well, I will say that I think we have a very good reputation of judges in this circuit. We had Judge Ellen Roper, who was the first female circuit judge in the state, who served for a very long time on the bench. I don't want to say exactly how long because I don't know. I don't want to misspeak. Judge Azel was on the bench for a very long time. Judge Hamilton and Judge Conley served us well. I certainly don't have the statistics on, whether cases have been reversed or not, those numbers, but I can say that our circuit has some of the top judges in the state, and I'm proud of the circuit that we're in.
There's a question in the chat. Does your court handle guardianships? If so, how closely do you interface with the county public administrator?
So I do. My probate docket, and I would say majority of hearings that I have in probate are guardianships. And so we do work very closely with the public administrators. I currently do not handle Callaway County guardianships unless it's a conflict for them. So I do not know Ms. Allen over who is the Callaway County public administrator, as well as I know our current public administrator, and who will be our next public administrator, Shemin. But I see them weekly. They're in my court, whether there's questions about whether they're going to be appointed, information as to their individual's mental health, their finances, etc. I work very closely with them.
Okay, then let's see if we have any closing comments from you.
So again, I appreciate all of your support over the years. I appreciate you inviting me today. The final thing that I want to say is right now, getting out the word is so incredibly important. I say sometimes that my world, my legal world, is somewhat small. But unfortunately, regular citizens are in my courtroom every single day. And it does matter who your judges are. And so I would just ask, text, call, email all your friends, family, everyone in Boone and Callaway County, explain to them how important our judges are and why I'm the right person for this next position. Yeah, so.
And it's really important that people, especially new voters, recognize that it's important to go down the ballot to all of the local positions.
Yes, up and down the ballot this year, up and down the ballot every year, but this year, up and down the ballot.
Okay. Thank you very much for being with us, and good luck in the campaign.
All right. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Okay.